There we go. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third of our series of Google Hangouts on Air training sessions about the collaborative response model software from Jigsaw Learning. Thanks again to Kurtis Hewson for agreeing to support us in this way with this training. So Kurtis will be focusing on areas of the software which we've received questions about and some tips and tricks for working with main areas of the CRM software that we've received some feedback about or understand that folks are having a little bit of trouble with. So without further ado, I'll turn the screen over to Kurtis and we'll work through some of those pieces. And I may stop Kurtis from time to time and ask him some questions and to go over some certain things that I know that people have questions about as well.
Excellent. And I'll also pause at certain points, Greg, just to check if there's any questions that have come up either through the email or on our group chat there as well. Okay, I'm going to move right to sharing my screen so that you can see our collaborative response model system. So there we go. So I'm going to be logging in here into my demo space and into the school. So now just a few notes here as we come into the school in regards to profiles. For any of the staff within Wolf Creek Public Schools with the access through the Clever portal, there is not the need or ability to change password, as that's done through your single sign-on. However, the sign-off timing, this may be something that you wish to investigate. Now, the sign-off timing default is set at 10 minutes. What this means is that after 10 minutes of inactivity, the system will automatically sign out. What will happen is that it will stay frozen on that screen, but as soon as you try and go anywhere within the screen, it's going to kick you right back off. Now, for some, you may want to increase this time, especially if you are heading into a collaborative team meeting where discussions may take over. Others, you may wish to decrease this time. Again, the default is set at 10. So I'm going to save it here, and I want to jump right in and talk about the team boards. Obviously, the team boards are a vital component of the collaborative response model system. And so I want to take a bit of time to talk about this. Now, some of the notes that we'll need to make is that whenever we create a team board, we provide that team board a name, but then we also have to determine its focus area. Now, each board can have a particular focus that we'd like to be able to investigate, whether that is within this school, they have set their focus as academic or behavior. Other schools can configure that or edit to fit whatever their needs are. But we're going to make this one an academic board. And let's call it our grade 8. We already have a behavior. So now let's go to an academic. And we'll go select the students that we have. Right now we know, and we've put it in as an update for our software, that going through to click each student can become quite tiresome. There will be a select all, deselect all buttons available. Currently, our development team has been working on ensuring accuracy of student rosters and working with the Clever synchronization. However, after that is resolved, then we will begin moving to addressing some of these issues that have come up. So I've selected all of my grade 8 students, and you can see I move them over to the side. Now, if there was ever a time I didn't want a particular student, let's say Michael Jackson, I can move him back off. However, I do want him on. Now, you may find that the card type is of value to you. We have found that the name only or name and data may be best if your board is holding a number of students, say 50 or more. They do become more difficult to read when we do have the pictures involved. They get larger. And I'll show you what I mean here by that. So we're going to choose the name and picture. Oftentimes the visualization also changes. We've found for large boards that the vertical visualization of the boards is the most effective. However, for smaller groups, you may find that the pyramid, inverted pyramid, or horizontal makes sense for you. So we're going to put this as a horizontal and see what this looks like for us. We'll go to our grade 8 academic. And you can see right now all of our students that are at Tier 1, but there is a scroll down the side. So obviously this visualization is probably not the best for the students that we have. Or one of the other features that we can engage in or utilize is our minimization. So we can minimize a tier if we're not talking about it at that particular time. One of the benefits of this is being able to see more students through that minimization. So I'm going to come back out, and again, I'll click on my user dashboard to come back out to my team boards. Again, at any time, we can go about editing these boards, but let's go edit that grade 8 academic. Oh, sorry. We're going to change it to name only. Actually, we're going to do name and data, and we'll talk about that. Currently, one of the works that we are looking at with our development team, again, after our synchronization and accurate student rosters are accomplished, is that we'll be able to utilize a data source to show up on our cards. And we'll talk about that more in a future webinar once that is established. But I'm also going to move us to vertical. And now let's take a look at how that has changed. Okay, easier to see. It's indicated my entry levels at this time. Now, one of the things that we have found that you will need to be aware of is only students that have tiers assigned at a particular intervention focus will appear on this board. So for instance, let's take Weird Al Yankovic as an example. We go into his profile, and we can see that if we did not have a tier associated with it, if it was left at just the blank and we save, it's actually going to ask us to select the student levels. It won't let us off this page without that. Let's try and get to our team board and see what happens. Yeah, so we couldn't save that. However, there are students that have been brought in new to the system without those intervention tiers established. So in our system, again, we are building or working with the team to ensure that any new students coming in are automatically defaulted to the default set in the school. However, if you are finding that students that you are selecting to come onto the boards are not showing up, you may have to make that adjustment for the tiers. Now, there's one other piece that I'd like to note here for you that may be effective. We talked about the minimization to be able to see more. There's also the ability through keyboard shortcuts to make our screens bigger or smaller in text size. Now, this may be very advantageous when you have large numbers of students up on the screen. So on a PC computer, holding the control button and either using the minus or plus signs, you can see by the minus, I'm going to be able to get many more students. And by plus, the names will be easier to see, but I'm not going to get as many in as well. This may be a feature that you'd like to use within your collaborative team meetings in order when projecting to see the most students possible. So just a reminder that with those team boards as they get established, to be continuing to check on if the students are making it, and if not, those are a couple of the troubleshooting areas that we can look at. And also one more time is that whenever we want to start a collaborative team meeting, utilizing our new collaborative team meeting, which board we'd like to talk about, continue. We select our date, who's in attendance. Oftentimes, we just have that scroll that you'll need to continue to utilize to see larger groups. One of the features we have heard from people is to be able to expand this larger so that we can see larger numbers of staff and students as well. But remember, in order to establish, and let's back out of this team meeting. In order to establish a meeting where we can see all of the actions that have been put in place. Oh, let's close out of that one from our other day. Not only do we see all of the actions that are put in place for any of the students, but then they're also filtered into those individual student profiles. So those are a couple of notes in relation to the team boards that may be of interest as you are getting these established. At this point, I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions coming from Greg or any of the other sources there.
So no other questions from outside, but I just wanted to clarify, is there any way of adding or assigning a tier to students other than going into their student profile and actually kind of doing them one by one, Kurtis?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So one of the things that we can utilize within our student profiles is edit current students. Now, as Greg alluded to, we can go into an individual. We'll go into Christy here and make that adjustment, but the one-to-one can become tedious if doing it for multiple students. However, the edit current students function allows us to do that for a large number of students. So for instance, let me take my grade 8s once again, and very similar to how we put students on the team board, we're going to select, let's select these 9. And we'd like for them on our academic board to all be at approaching expectations, but still tier 1. Now let's go see if that made that adjustment for us. Yeah, so you can see that that adjustment has been made. And then we can still do our individual adjustments here as well. Let's go look at that academic again. We can see Gary went there. But you'll notice that in student profiles, the edit current student is an easy way to be able to make adjustments for a number of students at a time, whether that is changing their academic focus, selecting to put them onto a board that you'd like for them to be on, or moving them to another teacher as well. I would suggest that for schools with the automatic synchronization, that changing their grade level is not something that we would be doing in here. We'd allow that synchronization to do that. One of the features as well that we haven't mentioned in past webinars is the ability to archive selected students. Archive students are students that have left our school, yet we're not sure where they've landed. Within the Clever synchronization, if a student were to move within Wolf Creek from one school to another, the synchronization would catch that and would move those students for us automatically. However, there are times when a student leaves and we have information established, but we just don't want to delete them from our system. Once a student is deleted, we're unable to retrieve any of the information that's been built. And for a number of our students, we're going to be building years worth of information that's of value. So for instance, let's take Michael, and we're going to archive him. Michael has left our school. We're not quite sure where he's headed off to, but at this point, we're going to archive him. I'll save. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll have to select Michael to put him in there and now save for an archive. Now, one of the things that you'll note is once a student is archived, if I go to search Michael, he's not here. I've lost Michael Jackson. However, I am able to go back to achieve him. Let's back up here. In regards to our add edit student, now at this school admin level, you'll notice in here that I can go to my archive students, take a look, and right now I can see there's one student archived, and right now it's a static date. that we have in place, but this will be the actual archive date when that student was archived. And we can see here that Michael is yet to return. So if we click on him and add back to the school, it'll ask us, select him, add him back, and now what grade level is he coming into? Was there a particular teacher? And we reset. Now, one of the things that we, again, will be building in here is that having students come back in with those defaults, or even better with the pre-existing. However, when we archive, we try and keep the minimal amount of a student record that we can, but I'm bringing them back, putting them on both of these boards, and save. And Michael is now back into my active student roster. And there we go. Okay, I'll pause there one more time to turn it back over to Greg, but hopefully that edit current students can allow us to make multiple adjustments for large groups.
Thanks. And so that feature that you showed us there in terms of being able to assign tiers to large groups of students very quickly might be something useful in the interim while we work through the pieces that we have still remaining with the data synchronization and syncing that we're working back and forth with your team on. It may be useful for our schools to just go and grab all of their grade 7 kids, grab all of their grade 8 kids, and assign them a default tier so that they don't run into some of the challenges that one or two of our schools have found where kids aren't showing up as you have described, right? So would that be accurate advice?
Yes, that is accurate. Now, one of the things that should be happening is that students who were in the system previously should have retained those intervention tiers. I believe that this is happening with primarily our newly added students. And again, we'll be building that default in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would you be able to go over the actions overview area of the software?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen back out here again. And let's back up here. Okay, so the actions overview. Now, if I was a user within the school at the teacher or staff level, I would not see these 4 school admin buttons. These are particular only to school admin. And you'll note that when we go into our actions overview, if I was just a teacher or staff user, I would only see my own individual user actions. I wouldn't see the school actions. So right now in this school, our administrator can see there's no outstanding actions. Nothing is overdue. And obviously, if there's nothing in the school, then as a user, I have nothing. But let's go in and create just an individual meeting. Okay, so I'm going to, let's pull up Robert Downey. And we're going to start a meeting record for Robert Downey. Now, this is not a collaborative team meeting. Any notes that we make here are only going to be made with Robert Downey, but we're going to choose our date today. We're going to choose what type of meeting it is. Now, at the district or at the school level, these can be configured to match descriptions of things happening in your school. However, we have just our defaults in here. Let's suggest that we're having a learning support team meeting, and actually we're going to talk about Robert and Chevy at the same time. Okay, and we have our principal and Joby are involved in this. So within our description, we're going to have here syncing constant attention in class. Again, just as a simplistic element. Now, within our interventions, we have built in a behavior intervention of peer mentoring. However, that's not an appropriate one for us. We'd like to assign an other action. And for this other action, we are putting down that we've reached a point where we need to contact the parents for a meeting. And we're going to ensure that our demo principal, our principal is responsible for that. and we'd like him to get that set up by tomorrow. Okay, so I'll go to save here. And we'll note that within our meeting records, we can see there was a learning support team meeting on this date. I open up my PDF, and one of the glitches that we've found is that when we're selecting 2 students, it is creating for us 2 intervention actions here as well. That is something that we will be fixing as we continue to move along. But we can see that right now, we have the status is not yet completed for this action, no comments, but our date for completion is there. So I'm going to go back out now and go back to my actions overview. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'm also going to go and note that because we had Chevy Chase's name attached to that, you can see here in his meeting records that he's had a learning support team meeting on the same day. And one of the features of this is that it makes no reference of the student who was being discussed in addition. So we do not see Robert Downey appear in this record, so that for a purpose of if we wanted to share this with parents or include this in an individual student record, it only applies to Chevy. So now I do want to back out and come back to my actions overview. So you'll note here that my dashboard has shifted to the top to allow us to focus in on our screen. Now in our actions overview, we can see that in the school, the demo principal has been assigned this action, and in user action, this is here. One of the pieces of feedback that we will be building in with one of our updates in the next while is to be able to indicate what student that particular action was put in place for. But for now, we're going to assume that our demo principal has made that phone call, placed that contact, and we're going to mark this as completed. And we're going to make a note that the meeting is set for Monday and save. Now, one of the other pieces that we will be adding here as well is the ability that when we have multiple students being discussed and similar actions put in place, that we have multiple actions assigned so that we could have a note for Chevy's parents being contacted and Robert's parents being contacted. But you'll note here now that there are no outstanding actions. That has been completed. We can go back to, let's go to Chevy's record, his meeting records from today. And we'll see now that, again, note that there is that glitch that will be addressed, that the status is completed now, and there is a comment that the meeting is set for Monday. And that was our original completion date that we were hoping to have that accomplished by. So the actions overview is a great way to not only note who will be responsible for each pieces coming out of any of our meetings, but also a way to just track, have we accomplished what we committed to accomplishing? In those meetings, what will happen is once an action is assigned and then the meeting is saved, users will receive an email that states they were involved in this meeting and the actions that were assigned to them. Just as a reminder, another feature that we are building in is the ability the day before an action is due for a reminder email to go out. However, as mentioned before, these additional pieces to be addressed have really been put onto our side plate as we put our entire focus now on ensuring the accurate rosters from the synchronization with PowerSchool. Okay, at that point, I'm going to pause once again to turn over to Greg. If there are any questions or any further inquiries that Greg would like to make on behalf of other users that have been interacting in the system.
You bet. So we have a pretty quiet audience today, but I'll pose some questions on your behalf. One of the things that I would like to maybe listen to some advice about would be if there are 3 or 4 most important pieces of information to attend to as schools are setting up environments like school boards, etc. As they're getting ready to use the software, whenever the next collaborative response model day, which is October 9th, what are 3 or 4 key things that people need to attend to as they're prepping the software to work with their staff?
Yeah, great point. So for the admin, here's a few of the things that we would want to ensure. First of all, we would want to ensure under our Configure School that we have everything configured the way that we like. Now, again, pulling from, I suppose I should share my screen so that you can see what I'm seeing. So I will back up here. Right now, in my home page, I am going to my Configure School as a school admin. So the first thing I'd want to do is ensure that my configurations are matching what I would like to have established within my school. Now, the grades should be coming in from Clever. There would be no need to adjust those. Our intervention tiers, ensuring that our language is correct. Now, within a district, the district may determine that the language that is being used for the tiers is set and that there's the desire to ensure that that's consistent across the division. There is the ability for a district to lock the intervention tiers as well as the entry levels. In that case, there would be a lock icon here to be aware of that those are established at a district level for schools. However, we'd want to ensure that as well the record checkboxes are set the way we'd like for the meeting. Our intervention focuses, typically the meeting descriptors will already be in place, but would not need to be much of an issue for, again, those initial collaborative team meetings. And again, those are established by the district. For Wolf Creek users, you will note that the record checkboxes and the meeting descriptors have very specific Wolf Creek language in them. You may wish to be adding or editing your logo. The logo is what appears on all the printed records, so there is some value to having that established. The profile checkboxes may be of interest to establish, and the student data. This is one that I'm going to address in our subsequent webinar. In our next webinar, in particular, as we start to examine in Wolf Creek, the STAR testing and how this data piece can be utilized within our school. However, at this point, I don't think I'm going to spend the time on that. So that's our first thing is, as a school, ensure that we have this set. Secondly, we would want to ensure that our staff lists are consistent. And right now, this is another piece that we are working with the Clever synchronization to ensure that these are accurate. I would expect right now that there are inconsistencies within school of staff members who have either left the school or who have come in that aren't noted. We will be, again, addressing those here as we're building this synchronization. However, one of the things that may be of interest is ensuring that any of the users that you wish to have access to build some of these pieces have the appropriate user permissions. Remembering that an admin user has access to everything within the school and can change configurations. Teachers are able to edit existing students and all meeting records, add or edit school interventions, and then the staff level that really just have a view-only ability within the software. Then the other thing that would be valuable to accomplish before those meetings is, again, ensuring that those team boards are established. To check back not only in this webinar, but in previous webinars on how to go about establishing that, as well as in the support network, we will be continuing to add resources to support teams in establishing that. The last piece of advice is ensuring that when we prepare for those collaborative team meetings, really make the message clear that the focus is on conversation and on kids. You may find it advantageous to have just one person in the software recording while everyone else can focus on what the conversation is. But when we start that conversation, make sure that we initiate it by establishing a new collaborative team meeting, that we determine our dates and who's in attendance, that we can note some celebrations consistent with our collaborative response model philosophy. For now, I'm just going to put a none and that there's no other notes at this point, and I'll save. And one of the notes that you'll always see is that when our meeting is active, that we have a team meeting active here up above. And now, as we click on students to talk, I can see an add notes. I continue that along, adding my notes that I like until I reach the end. And to deactivate that meeting, then all we need to click is end meeting. And no, I won't be printing this one. Okay. So just ensuring that we have that in place for us. Okay, I'll pause there one more time there for you, Greg, if there's any further questions or inquiries.
So we mentioned being in the process of ensuring that our data is syncing across properly and that we have fidelity of both students and staff data. So in the meantime, if our staff are building boards and adding students, or configuring their school and adding staff, what will happen in the case when the synchronization is completely working as it should, and now it's detecting that student or detecting that staff member? Are we going to end up with duplicate accounts, or how will that be handled?
Yeah, great question, Greg. So in this situation, there is a chance that we'll have those duplicate accounts being made, and what we'll need to do at that point is to go through and manually delete those students. However, our team, in conjunction with the Wolf Creek team, can assist schools in doing that. We would really encourage people at this point not to be adding those additional students in. We found that for a lot of students, they're existing in the system, but perhaps at a wrong grade. And so for things such as students being placed at the wrong grade, or having the wrong teacher assigned to them, we'll be correcting these. But even if you're adding notes, adding them to team boards, it won't make a difference which grade level necessarily it's showing that they're at, as we can still put a grade 3 student onto a grade 6 board, for instance. It would be more advantageous to do it that way. However, we do recognize that people want to get in and get using. And so if there are students manually created and we do find those duplicates happen, then we have no problem going back in to assist in cleaning up those records once we are fully synchronized.
Fantastic. So maybe we can allude to the future topics that we can explore. I do know that just today we're working on providing access to our inclusion coaches, our learning coaches, and various other individuals in our organization as district leaders. So potentially, if one of our future webinars could be around content specific to the district leader function and those groups of users and how their options may differ from the average school user and what they'll be able to do to support their schools.
Excellent. We can definitely look at that at a future webinar. We'll also, one topic that will be of interest is how do we go about establishing our interventions that we have established in the school? How do we begin to build those into the system so that we can begin pairing interventions and supports with particular students as well? That's another topic that we'll dive more deeply into in the coming weeks.
Okay, and can you remind folks of, should they encounter problems or questions inside of the software, what did you have built in order for them to be able to send in that feedback? I know that they can directly anytime get a hold of me, and I can work with you and things like that. But I know you had some features or some future features that are being built into the software, that are specific to providing feedback, to mentioning things that are may not be working right, etc. So I'll just let you talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Greg, you're absolutely right that if the issue that people are having is in regards to missing students or staff in the wrong schools, things that are very specific to the particular district, we'd encourage them to get in contact with their district support, so yourself within Wolf Creek, to be able to address those pieces. However, if it is an issue where it's actually something's not happening in the software or unaware of how to utilize in the software, you will note that for every user at the bottom of the dashboard, there's a support and a send feedback. Within the support, we can click to contact district support. Right now, we're still configuring the district support for our districts, but what this will do is just a quick pop-up email to be able to submit that to who is assigned as the district support liaison. However, we can also proceed to the system support, and that brings us to our support network, where we can search the knowledge base, where we can view some support documents, and also you'll note here past webinars and upcoming webinars. We continue to build this support area as we are continuing to work and finding issues and areas that people are liking support for. Then the other option that you'll note here is send feedback. We really encourage people to utilize this function. We have had opportunities where we will talk with someone and they'll say that they've had this frustration with this part of the program and they've had it for the last 2 months. Well, in order for us to attend to address, it's really important that we know what it is that people are having difficulty with. So you can see here within the feedback that we can provide any feedback here. And if we'd like to receive a response back, if we click no and continue, it'll ask us to submit. That is sent directly to us. However, if we wanted to get some feedback or a response, we click yes, continue, and all that we need to do is include our basic information and to provide an email or a phone number in order to receive a response. And then those are collected by us, and we monitor and respond to those as quickly as we possibly can for people. So encourage people to utilize this feature. Again, really important for us as we continue to build and enhance this quite new piece of software, that we're receiving that information in regards to what are the stumbling blocks that people are reaching, what are the frustrations, what are the glitches that are being encountered, and we can continue to work on those with our development team.
That's excellent, Kurtis, and I do want to emphasize that Kurtis has been extremely responsive anytime I have brought a concern from a school or a question, etc. And so I really want to commend you for that responsiveness, but I also want to make folks aware out there that Kurtis has heard feedback like an alphabetization of the student rosters and things like that. But some of it, as Kurtis has said, this is a brand new piece of software that is being built from the ground up. And some of it just takes time because, as Kurtis has said, right, the priority right now is the fidelity of data coming out of the student information sink for Wolf Creek. So those sorts of tweaks and troubleshooting steps and things take precedence over some of the other feedback about nice to have features that that you are receiving feedback about. And I just, like I said, wanted to commend you for the responsiveness that you do show to our folks, at least, that are sending you in feedback and things like that.
Great, thanks, Greg. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And so I think that's probably enough for today, Kurtis. Appreciate your time. So we're going to, I'll just grab the screen here back from you.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
You bet. And so for the Wolf Creek audience out there, just watch your email. There'll be more information coming about when our next webinar will be, and I'll work with Kurtis here after this particular broadcast on the specifics of the details about the content of that broadcast so that I can share that out with the wider audience, and you can be there in person yourself, watch at a later date the recorded seminar, or encourage those people who really should be here in the live studio audience to take part in the next webinar. So thanks again, Kurtis. Much appreciate your time and your expertise, and have a great Thursday afternoon, everybody.
Great, thank you.